She thought it was just another ordinary night at work, until she found a note and a stack of cash left behind by a mysterious customer. But when she discovered who he really was, her entire life changed forever. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales that remind us kindness still exists in the world. Clara had been a waitress at Luz de Estrellas for 3 years. It wasn't a high-end place, just a small, warm restaurant on a quiet street in Los Angeles. But for many, it was a home away from home. For Clara, it was more than just a job. It was her lifeline. As a single mother raising a 6-year-old son, Lucas, every dollar mattered. Every order she took, every tip she received, meant another meal on their table, another bill paid, another month of survival. She had learned how to work through exhaustion, through back pain, through rude customers, because she had no other choice. That night started like any other. The dinner rush was in full swing, the sound of plates clinking, conversations blending into a steady hum, the faint music playing through the old speakers. It was the kind of chaotic normalcy Clara was used to. Then, he walked in. At first glance, he wasn't remarkable. A man in a simple black jacket, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He moved with a quiet confidence, but something about him felt different. Not threatening, not dangerous, just different. He chose a table near the window far from the crowd, not in a corner, not trying to hide, but positioned just enough to observe everything without being seen. Clara barely paid him any mind at first. She had other customers to serve, a long list of pending orders, and a manager keeping a watchful eye on her. Still, something made her glance at him more than once. Unlike the others, he wasn't checking his phone. He wasn't talking to anyone. He just sat there, staring out the window, fingers lightly tapping against the wooden table, as if lost in thought. When she finally approached, her usual tiredness disappeared for just a second. "Good evening. What can I get for you?" The man looked up, and for a brief moment, Clara felt a strange sense of recognition. Not because she knew him, because his eyes. They held a depth she couldn't quite place, a quiet intensity. Then he smiled, just a small, almost hesitant smile. "Just a coffee, please." His voice was calm, steady. Clara nodded, quickly jotting it down. "Anything else?" The man seemed to think for a second, then shook his head. "No, just the coffee." She turned away, dismissing the odd feeling. It was just another customer, just another order. But as the night went on, something strange happened. She kept noticing him. The way he savored his coffee, sipping it slowly as if he had all the time in the world. The way his gaze flickered toward the other customers but never lingered. The way he sat in perfect stillness, as if he was searching for something, or maybe escaping from something. By the time the restaurant started to empty, Clara had moved on. Another busy night, another paycheck. Then she turned back to his table, and he was gone. She hadn't seen him leave, hadn't heard the door open or close. But he had left something behind. A small, neatly folded envelope. Frowning, Clara hesitated before picking it up. She opened it, and her heart skipped a beat. Inside was a note, handwritten in elegant script. "Thank you for your kindness. You may not realize it, but people like you make the world a better place." Beneath the note was something else. A thick stack of cash. Clara's hands trembled. It wasn't just a generous tip, it was enough to cover her rent for 3 months. Her breath caught. Who was he? And why had he done this? Then, before she could process it, her manager, Mr. Morales, who had been clearing a nearby table, suddenly froze. Clara glanced up. "What's wrong?" Mr. Morales stared at the note, his expression unreadable. Then he exhaled sharply and muttered under his breath. Words that sent a chill down Clara's spine. "I think you just met someone very, very important." Clara's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" But before he could answer, another voice interrupted them. A customer, a middle-aged woman who had been sitting across the restaurant, watching the whole thing, spoke up. "I know who he is." Clara's pulse jumped. The woman leaned forward, lowering her voice. "That man, I swear to you, that was Keanu Reeves." Clara stopped breathing. In number, that wasn't possible. Keanu Reeves, here, in this small restaurant. But the woman was nodding, eyes wide. I know it was him. I've seen him in interviews. I swear it was him. Clara's hands tightened around the note. She slowly looked down at it again, her pulse racing. Had she just served one of the most famous men in the world, without even realizing it? And if it was really him, why had he chosen her? Clara's hands trembled as she stared at the note again. Could it really be him? Keanu Reeves? Number. That didn't make sense. Why would a Hollywood superstar walk into her restaurant, order a simple coffee, and leave behind enough money to cover her rent for months? But the woman across from her was convinced. I've seen him in interviews, she insisted. The way he carries himself, the way he talks. That was Keanu Reeves. I'd bet my life on it. Clara felt her heart hammering in her chest. She turned back to Mr. Morales, her manager, who was still staring at the note with an unreadable expression. You know something, Clara said, her voice almost a whisper. Don't you? Mr. Morales hesitated. Then, with a slow sigh, he nodded. There's something about him, he admitted. A few years ago, a guy who looked just like him came into a different restaurant I worked at. Saturday alone, ordered something small, didn't want any attention, same quiet, respectful presence. Clara leaned in. And? Mr. Morales exhaled. The next day we found out that someone had anonymously paid off one of the waitress's medical bills. She never knew who did it, but we always suspected. His voice trailed off. Clara swallowed hard. Was Keanu Reeves secretly helping people like this all the time? She needed to know. That night, after putting Lucas to bed, she sat at her tiny kitchen table and opened her laptop. She typed into the search bar, Keanu Reeves' secret acts of kindness. The results flooded in immediately. Dozens of articles. Keanu Reeves helps strangers without recognition. A Hollywood star, unlike any other stories of Keanu's quiet generosity. How Keanu Reeves secretly changes lives, without ever taking credit. Clara clicked on one of them, her eyes widening with every paragraph. A struggling college student once found out his tuition had been anonymously paid, turns out. Keanu had been at the same bookstore the day before. Clara exhaled sharply. Her stomach flipped. This wasn't just a rumor. It wasn't just some random act of generosity. Keanu Reeves actually did things like this. And now, he had done it for her. But why? Why had he picked her? She barely had time to process it when her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Clara's pulse spiked. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? A familiar voice, calm, warm, unmistakable. Hi, is this Clara? She froze, because she knew that voice. She had heard it in movies. She had heard it in interviews. It was him, Keanu Reeves. Clara's breath caught. I hope I'm not calling too late, Keanu continued. I just wanted to make sure you got my note. Clara forced herself to breathe. I did, she stammered. I don't even know what to say. Keanu chuckled softly. You don't have to say anything. Silence hung between them for a second. Then Keanu's tone softened. I just wanted you to know. I saw the way you worked tonight, the way you treated people. It reminded me of someone I used to know. Clara's throat tightened. This wasn't random. He had noticed her, and that was why he had done this. She gripped the phone tighter. Thank you, really. That money, she hesitated, her voice breaking slightly. It's going to help me and my son more than you know. Keanu was quiet for a moment. Then, he said something Clara never expected. I was wondering, would you and Lucas like to visit me on set? Clara froze. Lucas? The movie set? This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. But Keanu was serious. I feel like he'd have fun, Keanu added. You too, if you're free, of course. Clara was at a loss for words. This morning, she had woken up thinking it was just another normal day. And now, Keanu Reeves was personally inviting her and her son to visit a Hollywood set. Clara pressed her hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. Finally, she whispered, Yes, we'd love to. Keanu chuckled again. Great. I'll have someone send you the details. There was another pause. Then he said, See you soon, Clara. Call ended. And Clara just sat there, staring at her phone, unable to believe what had just happened. Her life had just changed. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, Clara woke up still convinced it had been a dream. Had she really spoken to Keanu Reeves? Had he really invited her and Lucas to visit a Hollywood movie set? The buzzing notification on her phone confirmed it. New message from unknown number. Here are the details for the visit. Let me know if you need anything. Looking forward to meeting Lucas. Clara stared at the message for a long time. This wasn't a dream, it was real. Her heart pounded as she glanced at Lucas, who was still curled up in bed. How was she supposed to explain this to him? She took a deep breath, then gently shook him awake. "Sweetheart, wake up." Lucas groaned, rolling over. 5 more minutes. Clara smiled. "What if I told you we were going to visit a real movie set today?" Lucas's eyes snapped open. His face lit up with pure excitement. "Wait, what?" Clara bit her lip, trying to contain her own emotions. "Keanu Reeves invited us." Lucas shot up. "The Keanu Reeves? Like, the one from the movies? The really cool guy?" She laughed at his enthusiasm. "Yes, that Keanu Reeves." Lucas blinked. "Mom, are you telling me we're going to Hollywood?" "Yes, baby, we are." Lucas screamed in excitement. Within minutes, he was dressed and ready before Clara could even process what was happening. When they arrived at the studio, Clara's nerves hit hard. This was a world she had never stepped into before. Huge trailers, massive cameras, people rushing around with headsets. It was another universe. A security guard checked their names, then waved them in without hesitation. They were led through the massive set, passing by towering green screens and cameras bigger than Lucas. Lucas was in awe. "This is the coolest thing ever," he whispered, his eyes darting around like he couldn't take in enough at once. Then they turned a corner, and there he was, Keanu Reeves, dressed casually in jeans and a jacket, standing with a few crew members. The moment he saw them, his face lit up with a warm smile. "Clara, Lucas, you made it." Lucas froze in shock. Clara swallowed hard. This was really happening. Keanu walked over, crouching down to Lucas's level. "Hey, buddy, welcome to the set." Lucas could barely breathe. You're Keanu Reeves," he stammered. Keanu chuckled. "That's what they tell me." Lucas's eyes were wide with wonder. "Are you going to do cool action moves?" Keanu grinned. "I might, but first I thought you might want to sit in the director's chair." Lucas's jaw dropped. "For real?" Keanu nodded. "Come on, I'll show you how it all works." Lucas couldn't believe it. Keanu took him by the hand and led him over to the director's station. The crew was already smiling at how adorable his excitement was. As Lucas sat in the big official chair, his eyes sparkled. "Mom, look!" Clara laughed, her heart swelling. She had never seen Lucas so happy. Then Keanu turned to her. "And you? How does it feel to be behind the scenes?" Clara shook her head in disbelief. "It's overwhelming, but incredible." Keanu smiled. "Good." Then his expression shifted just slightly. "There's something I wanted to talk to you about." Clara's stomach flipped. What could Keanu Reeves possibly want to talk to her about? He gestured toward a quiet corner, away from the cameras and crew. Clara followed, her pulse racing. Then, Keanu did something unexpected. He pulled out another small envelope and handed it to her. Clara hesitated before opening it. Inside was a letter, and something else. Her breath caught. It was an offer. A formal invitation to work with Keanu's foundation. Clara's hands shook. "Keanu, what is this?" He smiled softly. "I wasn't just passing through that night at the restaurant. I was observing." Clara blinked. "Observing? I noticed how you treated every customer, how hard you worked even when you were exhausted, and it reminded me of the kind of people I want to help." Tears burned at the corners of Clara's eyes. "You've worked so hard for so long," Keanu continued. "I want to give you an opportunity to use your kindness and dedication for something bigger, something that changes lives." Clara's voice caught. "I don't understand. Why me?" Keanu tilted his head. "Why not you?" Clara pressed a hand over her mouth, trying to hold back the overwhelming emotion. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a chance to build something, to give back the way someone had given to her. But then, fear crept in. Could she really leave the restaurant? Could she step into a whole new world? She thought of Lucas. She thought of all the sleepless nights, All the worries about bills, all the time she had wondered if she was enough. And then she thought of this moment. Keanu believed in her. Lucas was watching her, eyes full of hope. This was the chance she never thought she'd get, and she wasn't going to let fear take it away. She looked back at Keanu, blinking away the tears. Yes. Keanu's smile widened. You sure? She nodded, her voice steady now. Yes. 1,000 times. Yes. Keanu reached out and gave her a warm handshake. Welcome to the team, Clara. At that moment, Lucas ran over, still buzzing from his director's chair experience. Mom, did you see? I got to say, action. Clara pulled him into a hug, laughing through her tears. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something she hadn't in years. Hope. Clara's decision changed everything. She left the restaurant to work with Keanu's foundation, helping people who had been in her exact situation, struggling, working hard, but needing a break. And Lucas? That single visit to the movie set sparked something inside him. He started writing stories, making little films on his mom's phone, dreaming of one day directing a movie of his own. Years later, as Clara sat in the front row of a small film festival, she watched as the credits rolled. Written and directed by Lucas Ramirez. She covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. When Lucas stepped onto the stage to accept his award, he looked at her with so much love. Then, into the microphone, he said, "This story is about someone who taught me what it means to never give up." He looked straight at his mom. My hero, Clara Ramirez. The audience erupted in applause. And sitting beside her, clapping the loudest, Keanu Reeves. Clara's life changed because of one small act. One cup of coffee, one simple note, one incredible opportunity. And now, she was paying it forward. Because sometimes, the most unexpected moments lead to the greatest stories. And for Clara, Lucas, and Keanu, this was just the beginning. If this story inspired you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because you never know, a small act of kindness might just change a life.